Hey, just want to do a quick little video here on the GoPro Hero 11 Mini. I know a lot of you guys have sort of a love-hate relationship with this camera. I, for one, have not had too many problems with this one, especially I know there's a sort of a overheating issue with this one, but I think it's not necessarily an overheating issue. I think it's a firmware problem because I was having some problems with this camera when the first came out, and the initial firmware as it came out, from the factory, were I think I would say on the unstable side. I would get some random lockups and freezes, and sometimes it wouldn't turn on. I would have to do a hard reset. But I found that once the Labs firmware came out, a lot of my sort of unreliability type issues, like sort of it being kind of locking up, that kind of thing, those went away with the very first firmware that I installed on here from GoPro Labs. Believe the latest version that was out is from May of 2023, so a few months ago. And when you put that firmware on here, you turn on the camera, it'll say here GoPro Labs on there, and I've had some pretty good results with this camera. I haven't had any overheating problems, haven't had it freeze up on me, haven't had like the video just not record, that kind of thing. I do think that some people that are claiming that the camera is overheating and stopping the recording is not actually because it's overheating. It's because the firmware is unstable. So this back heatsink does get hot, and so people think, oh, the camera's off, it must have overheated. And I found that that's not necessarily the case, because I've had this before. I put the GoPro Labs firmware on here, I would do a recording. It would be a really short recording, maybe a couple minutes, and the back heatsink wasn't that hot, and then I would find that the recording had stopped in the middle unexpectedly. And that's not because it's overheating. It takes quite a bit to actually get this camera to overheat. You have to have it sit on a table recording at 4K, like 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second for a fair amount of time, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it'll actually shut off. So I do know that a lot of people that have made claims that it's overheating, it's probably not due to it's not because it's actually overheated. It's because there's something going on with our firmware. And so I think if you upgrade to the Labs firmware, you're going to probably have much better results with this camera compared to what you're having before on the stock firmware. Now, of course, some people have definitely had this camera overheat on them, and I know for a fact that I have a couple friends that picked up these, and they've told me that they in fact did overheat the camera. And I think that if you overheat the camera too many times, it does damage the camera, and it makes it more prone to overheating a lot faster in later sessions. So if you do tend to just have the camera sit without any airflow and do long recording sessions at high frame rates, the camera will overheat, of course, and it doesn't matter what firmware it's on here. And I do know that if you overheat it like multiple times, it does tend to damage the camera and damage the camera permanently, so that its ability to not overheat in the future becomes less. So it becomes more prone to overheating, and it gets actually worse over time. So something to keep in mind. But if you're not using the camera in that way, where if it's only on for a few minutes and it shuts off, that's not, in my opinion, an overheating problem. That's just a firmware problem. And I would recommend trying out the Labs firmware. I'll put a link down in the video description. Give it a try, and let me know in the comments if that helped you out or not, because I've been on the Labs firmware for a while now, and I have the Labs firmware on 3 of these, and I haven't any issues. I do my normal flights, 5-10 minutes, no problems, as long as it has airflow in the air. I've never had this camera overheating me once. You can get this to overheat if you, of course, just sit on, hit the record button at a high frame rate, just put it on the table, and no airflow on it. Of course, it'll overheat, because the heatsink can only dissipate so much heat if there's no airflow. So, if you want to overheat it, you can definitely do it. It's just that if you use it in the normal way, like most FPV pilots would use the Mini 11, and you go and fly it, it should work normally. So I've never had any problems, at least ever since I put the Labs firmware on the Mini 11. So again, I'll link that down in the description where you can download that. Give it a try and let me know what your results are. That'll do it for this video. Talk to you guys in the next one.